Hey guys, good morning. Whoa! That was not planned. Is someone trying to send me a message? I don't even know how I'm in this filter. Hold on a second. How do we get it off? I don't even know how to get it off. Hold on a second. How do we do it? Guys, help me. Okay, hold on. Okay, hold on. There we go. I'm sorry. I didn't even press the button. I don't even know how that happens. If someone's trying to send me a message, I hear it loud and clear. Okay. Instagram fail this morning. Fail. All right. Actually, it starts us off on a good note, though, because I have a really fun story to share with you guys before we get to some of the more serious news. And I have to thank you because without SmartHER News, there is no way I would have learned this story. And I was sitting last night just sort of thinking, we need something like a little different on the website tomorrow. I don't know. I just had this feeling we need something different. And whenever I get that, I try to look a little bit into history because history is a great teacher. And I learned something that I had never learned before. And I hope you haven't heard about it either, although if you have, that's awesome. This day in history, in 1964, the flying housewife made it back to America, becoming the first woman to have a solo flight around the world. And her name was Jerry Mock. And she loved to fly when she was a little girl. In fact, she was in an aeronautical engineering program in college, but she dropped out to get married and have kids in the 1940s. And so, even though she liked to fly, it wasn't something that she necessarily thought she was going to do. She liked being in a plane. She hadn't learned to fly yet. Her husband and her decided to take private flying lessons in the late 1950s. And that was fun. She had 2 young sons, and she ended up having another daughter. And a couple years later, after taking these private flight lessons, she sort of said to her husband, honey, I'm kind of bored. I'd like to have some fun. And he said to her, why don't you just go fly around the world? And then she did. A couple years after she got her private flying license, she takes off and becomes the first American woman to fly around the world by herself. Her plane caught on fire. She lost radio contact. She landed sometimes in the wrong place, but she made it. And she left her 17-year-old, her 16-year-old, and her then 3-year-old behind for 29 days to travel around the world. Amazing, right? She was 11 years old when Amelia Earhart disappeared on that journey. And so she completed it, although we never really know anything about it. I've never really heard anything about her. So she would often refer to herself as the flying housewife because she was a housewife. And it's just a reminder to all of us. She was 38 when she did this, by the way. She was 38 years old. You never know the timing for what your purpose is in life. And even though you might take a couple detours, there might be a bigger plan for you. So there probably was for Jerry Mock. And there she went, just waving, bye-bye. Left her kids. See you later. I get worried when I leave for 3 days. She left for almost 30, and then she flew around the world. I know. So that happened. April 17, 1964, she completed her mission. A couple other serious news items I just wanted to flag for you today. Of course, Notre Dame Notre Dame Cathedral continues to be a major news story. Now we're getting reports of nearly $1 billion pledged for the repair. And there's some controversy about the president of France saying that he wants all the repairs done in 5 years by the time that the Olympics actually come to Paris. And there's some debate about whether or not they can do it in 5 years, but he's setting a goal, and that's where we're at right now, still as investigators are trying to figure out exactly what happened. Also back here at home, a really big story in Colorado that you should know about. A lot of the school districts in the Denver metro area are closed today because a young woman came from Miami to Colorado. Apparently she's obsessed with Columbine shooting, and FBI says she's armed and dangerous. Super scary. They can't find her, and she's made credible threats of violence in the school districts there. This Saturday will be the 20th anniversary of the Columbine school shooting, one of the worst school shootings in American history. There's heightened awareness because of that, but obviously if you're a parent in Colorado, this is a really scary situation. So the FBI can't find her, law enforcement's looking for her, all the schools are shut down. something you should know about. Okay, one thing I want to talk about today, we mentioned it yesterday, is that we have been really looking into the story about illegal border crossings at the southern border. And we started off with a real fundamental question. We did a lot of reporting, and you're going to see that on our website today. But of that reporting, I want to deduce it even further to 3 points I think you need to know about what's going on with illegal immigration in America today. And I hope to do a longer podcast in a little while on this topic because there's a lot of really important information out there, and I'm not seeing it everywhere. And I think it's important that you know about it. So one of the things I think you should know about illegal immigration at the U.S. southern border is that it is historic. We have never seen numbers like this. Now, people will say, well, yeah, 10 years ago, we saw 100,000 people cross the border illegally and were apprehended. And that may be true, but we have not seen the number of family units as a parent or a guardian traveling with a child come across the border in this way. If we look back at our March numbers, what we know is that the majority of the people that were apprehended at the U.S. southern border were a parent and a child or an unaccompanied child, so that's someone 17 and younger. That has never happened in America before. Let me just say it again. It's never happened in the numbers in America like this in America before. So even some of the comparisons people are trying to make to illegal immigration in the past and past policies, you need to know that we're in a new territory. Because of this, we started with a very fundamental question. Well, last year, we were hearing about these stories about children separated from their families. We just started to hear about it in April of last year. So what's happening to these folks now? Like, where do they go? What happens to them? And we had no idea what a difficult question that was to answer. I had a series of communications with Customs and Border Protection as well as Immigration and Customs Enforcement. They were extremely helpful, directing me to public information as well as answering some of my questions. So I really appreciate that. But I think it's really important to know what a historic environment we're in. Here's just a little perspective for you. Last year, Border Patrol encountered 13 groups of 100 or more people traveling across the border. 13 groups of 100 or more people. Some of them could be more than 100, but at least 100 people. This year, already, they've encountered more than 100 groups of 100 plus people in them at one time. That gives you an idea of how the system is being overwhelmed. And that is exactly what Border Patrol is talking about. So what happens when they encounter a group of people? What happens to those people? Here's the process. There's an initial search where these folks are found. They're then brought back to a processing center. The processing center takes a look at who they are. Everyone is charged at this point, if you are an adult, with illegal entry. It's a federal misdemeanor. That sounds serious, but here's a little bit of perspective. A federal misdemeanor is punishable to upwards of 6 months in prison. Another federal misdemeanor is if you illegally sell stamps. That's another federal misdemeanor. So that gives you some perspective. You can actually be in prison longer for cutting down trees on federal property than you can for crossing the southern border illegally. But every adult is charged with this federal misdemeanor. So they're processed, their fingerprints are checked. There's a little bit of a background check about who they are. If they're a first-time offender, they are given a notice to appear and they are released. What you should know about the majority of people coming across the southern border is that they're applying for asylum. So they are charged because they illegally crossed. But then at that point, when they're applying for asylum and they're saying, I'm seeking asylum, the Border Patrol agents and whoever is on site does an initial interview with them and then releases them. So it is fair to say that almost, if not all the people that came across the southern border illegally and who were apprehended in March, which is about 90,000 people, the likelihood is that most of them were released on their own recognizance within 72 hours of being apprehended. Where do they go? That's a great question. They have to tell Border Patrol roughly where they're headed, but it's up to them to report to an immigration officer in that area so they can continue their case. If they don't, they could become a fugitive. I was talking to ICE about this yesterday, but no one watches them. No one's monitoring them. No one knows where they are. No one knows really where they go. No one helps them get to where they're going. It's purely up to them. So they are in America somewhere. And that's the reality. Now, if they are, just want to pause there for a second. If someone is suspicious, has a background check problem, um, it's their second or third time crossing the border illegally, they are detained. And if there is a question about the welfare of the child would be separated, just like in America. If I was arrested and there was a question about, my children's welfare, they would be separated from me. But that's not happening. That's very rare to happen. And I think the bigger takeaway from me doing all this research was I was surprised how quickly people are released and how little oversight there is of them once they're released. Now, I was thinking about that because I don't want to portray it like all these people are dangerous. We have no idea. When you go to a grocery store, you don't know who you're going into a grocery store with. Some of these people could be good, some of them could be bad, but the bottom line is that we don't know where they are and we don't know exactly who they are. We know very little about them, but we cannot hold them. We have nowhere to put them. Even if we were able to detain them for up to 20 days, that's all we have, and then we have to release them unless they were seen by an asylum judge, an immigration judge. So this is the current situation at the U.S. southern border. This is what I really want you to know about. There's no indication that this pace is slowing down in any way, and this is what Border Patrol is dealing with on a regular basis. Quick final note on this, and I think this is really crucial. We're talking about these huge groups coming across the border. One of the things that Border Patrol talked about in a press call is they said, smugglers are smart. Criminals are smart. They're sending these groups of people with children to some of the most remote, worst areas that you could be the farthest away from medical help and really from anybody else. Part of the reason why they're doing that is that the bad guys get to sneak in when we're trying to help those other people. So remember, the 90,000 plus people apprehended at the border are the ones that we know about. We actually don't have a number of the amount of people illegally crossing the border because there's some we don't know about. And that's a real concern. If you really want to worry about the bad guys, that's where the concern is. It's not necessarily in the groups of women and children that are coming across the border applying for asylum. It's how criminals are then using that as a distraction from Border Patrol agents to get the bad guys in another direction. It's really scary. I mean, that part is super scary. So these are the couple things I want you to know about. It's historic times. Everyone coming across the border illegally is being charged with a federal misdemeanor. They are in a system, but then they are released on their own recognizance. I think that's really, really important to know about. And one of the questions I have from here that I'm going to reach out to the Justice Department is, when someone's released on their own recognizance, ICE told me that they don't have oversight over that person. So then who does? Who does? There's more than 1 million people in this country right now that got their final orders, removal orders, because they didn't follow through with an immigration judge. More than 1 million people. So these are some numbers that are kind of washing over us. I think, again, it's a really important story to know about because there's so many different politics involved. But these are the facts coming from the people that are dealing with it the most, and that's Customs and Border Protection and Immigration and Customs Enforcement. So I want you to know a little bit about that. Okay, so that's some of our exclusive reporting on our website today. So check that out if you can. I think it's really crucial, and I think, again, regardless of Republican or Democrats, the current situation on the border is very similar to the policies that we've done in the past. Even though President Trump has tried controversial policies to deter people from crossing over the border, right now we're in a very similar sort of catch and release policy that we've done in the past, which is you get people when they come across the border and then more or less you release them. And one of the major issues is then what happens next. So if you have any questions on that, please let me know. Direct message me or email me, info@smarternews.com. Again, I'm going to package this up, I think, in a neater little podcast so that you could have 10 or 15 minutes just purely on what's going on at the U.S. southern border because it's so historic. I think we should all know about it. All right, guys, have a great day. I have to run to an early morning meeting, which I usually don't have morning meetings. I'm usually with the kids, as you know. So I'm going to go do that, trying to spread the word about SmartHER News. Gotta hustle. Have a great day, guys. Talk to you later.